Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 1 year in business.
I just want to take this opportunity Kevin's given me to say thank you. Thank you for instilling a trust in me, to selecting me, choosing me to be the next mayor of this great city we call Palm Bay. I really appreciate the opportunity. I won't let you down. I'll serve you with God, honor, and integrity. May God bless you. May God keep you. May God continue to bless our great city, Palm Bay. Hoorah.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good evening, Palm Bay. Welcome to Palm Bay Live. Welcome to our first debate for Brevard County School Board. We have in-house with us tonight via our networks, Kim and Katie. And welcome, ladies, to the platform.
Thanks for having us, Kevin.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And so what I want to do is I want you guys to introduce yourselves. So I'm going to remove, let's go ahead and start with Kim. I'm going to remove Katie from the platforms. That way we can have, just introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and why you're running for this post.
Sure. My name's Kim Huff, and I'm running for school board in District 5. I am a mom to 2 kids, 9 and 12, that attend Brevard Public Schools. I am a wife of a 24-year retired Navy veteran, and I am the vice president of Families for Safe Schools, which is an organization with several other members of our community and family members, organized last year. And I'm running for school board because I really feel that all of our students need to be represented in a respectful and unique way that we just haven't had the same representation on our school board this last couple of years through the pandemic.
Okay, great. And let's go ahead with Katie.
Hi. Well, I'm Katie Campbell, and my family and I moved here to Brevard County in 2007. I am a former teacher. I taught for 7 years in Kentucky and in Texas. I taught middle school music for those years in public schools, all different kinds of Title I and diverse schools. I also went back into the schools a few years before I joined the board for the flexibility of working as a sub. And by the way, we're looking for subs if somebody's looking for a flexible job. I did that for a couple of years. And of course, my kids have all gone to BPS schools, just graduated my oldest daughter from Heritage High School this past May. And so, my family has just been invested in our community. And my husband's a pastor. We've been serving in the community for 15 years. And so all of those experiences really helped me in the job that I'm doing over the last 4 years. And so I am currently on the school board. I've been there for 4 years. And so when I think about the level of just knowing our community, knowing how the education system works, knowing what it's been for my family, we've gotten a little taste of everything: athletics and music and special needs and gifted programs, and in 4 different schools across District 5. All those things really come together to help me to make really great decisions for our students that incorporate everything, all the vast knowledge that you kind of have to put together to make the decision. So I want to continue to do that. I feel like it's a calling for me, and that I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and it's a calling for me to try to do it again. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right, ladies. Let me see. Kim, I'm not seeing you. Oh, there you are. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is go into some hot topic issues. And of course, the one I want to lead out with is COVID. So I want to lead out with COVID. And so the first question to you ladies is, how well do you believe BPS managed the COVID crisis? And I will start out with Katie because she currently sits on the board.
Right. Well, sure. I don't know how many times we said unprecedented over the last couple of years, but every time we'd have something that was unprecedented, then we'd have another thing that would ramp it up and be even more unprecedented. And so, I think that our staff, our board, did a great job of trying to consider all of the different aspects. Were we perfect? No. Did we have some struggles? Absolutely, yes. Was it hard on our teachers, hard on our students, hard on all of our staff and our community? Absolutely. But we were walking through it together. And one of the things that we tried to do from the beginning, even when the state shut us all down in March of 2020, was to really try to bring that, we're trying to do this together. That we had that theme of one Brevard. And so, we had just thousands and thousands of people give us their community input in those months from April, May, June of 2020. And we had marathon long meetings, 11 and a half hours, I think was our record longest meeting that we had, just trying to listen to the community, take those, all of that input in addition to our health experts from the health department, the guidelines we're getting from the state, the guidelines we're getting from the federal government. Sometimes those things conflicted. And so we were really left to just make some calls. It was an unknown time. And then as we moved through from 2020 to 2021, and then into 2022, things have changed and grown. We've had more things available for people who were worried, and we try to give as many options as possible. I was just talking to some of our Brevard virtual school teachers this morning, thanking them for the work they did, because we had to extend some of our enrollments to make sure that families who were afraid to come back in our buildings had those options available for them both of the last couple of school years. And so, was it perfect? No, but I think we did a pretty good job of just taking all those inputs in together to make decisions for our students and our faculty.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Okay, Miss Kim, it's going to be your turn now.
Okay, so I feel like we did some good things and we had some not so good things. My children did all the different types of schools that were available to them. We started out with e-learning from their in-classroom teachers in 2020, fall of 2020. I felt like Brevard Public Schools was doing such a great job that after 9 weeks, I sent them back to school with masks because I felt that they were definitely safe and not going to be sick every couple weeks. I wasn't really watching what the school board was doing at that time. And then in May, when the board decided that they were going to remove requirements for masks, I was hopeful because we were doing so great in terms of keeping numbers down. But as the school year rolled into fall of 2020 in July and August, I started to become very concerned. The board was not meeting to discuss what was happening or having a special meeting to change any of the rules. And really, the first part of that school year it was a disaster. We had thousands of kids sick. We had tens of thousands of students quarantined. And once the mask requirement came into effect, it was really too late. We were already starting to swing down in the way that this happens. And so my kids spent the first semester of last year in Florida virtual school. That was not a good fit for any of us. My children just were unhappy. They didn't have their friends or their teachers. And so we've done them all. And actually, Families for Safe Schools evolved out of that process in August of 2021. Just seeing some of the things that were happening in the school board meetings and not being happy with the voices. We felt unrepresented. And so I feel like we did some great things and we didn't do some great things.
Okay, great. Kim, I'm going to ask you this. Had you been the chair during COVID and sitting on that dais, what decisions would you have made differently?
I don't envy the decisions that our school board members had to make at that time. It was even sitting in that room, people were angry, accusatory, unhappy with everything. I mean, it was a situation where they definitely could not make everybody happy. I would have followed medical recommendations. The people who were in our hospitals sat there and gave what I felt were very clear instructions about what was going to happen when the school opened. And it played out exactly the way they said it would. And so I think that I would have made some different decisions about going into this 2021 school year. It feels like a lifetime ago, based on just keeping our students and staff protected.
Okay, great. All right, Katie, your turn.
Same question. Well, I'll tell you, Kim did touch on one thing, and that is that you represent all of your constituents, but at the same time, you can't represent all of your constituents. What I mean by that is, you have to listen to every side. You have to be respectful to every side. But the truth is, when you make a decision, there's always going to be one group that you're not going to do exactly what they want. And so you have to, you're going to have to make a call, like I mentioned earlier. I will say, when it came to 2021, we were in a different place. We had vaccines available to the people who wanted them. we had, by the time school year started, many people who had already contracted the disease, and even according to the CDC standards, had at least 90 days of immunity, documented studies done. And so we were, and of course we had, some guidelines put out by the state as well, some directives by the state. But we were in a different place. And so when we finished that school year, and we had people clamoring the whole 2020-21 school year, to take the mask mandate down, and we didn't. And I, through that year of people coming, I would stay consistent until that school year was over, and could be very specific with why. And that was because we did have the vaccine for those who wanted it, for all but the youngest people, and who have shown from the beginning that they are the least susceptible, and so to serious disease. And so we were in a different place, and we were listening, and I was listening. I'll tell you, one of our really long meetings that we had, we took a break, and I opened my email, and I had one email from someone saying, I want a mask mandate. And the very next email said, don't mandate masks. So, at those times, I will tell you, that is a subject that I did more research than any other subject. It's kind of seems silly because masks it's just not the priority of education, right? But I spent so much time over those couple of years just really digging in, and not just listening to talking heads, but really listening to all the feedback we were getting, and spending the time to do the work and try to make those calls. So, if I could do it all over again, would I change it? Knowing what I did at the time, no, I think we did the right thing.
Okay. So the next question is going to start with Miss Katie. You talk about masks, so I'm going to ask you, what is your opinion on the Sophia Bizarre case? Of that young lady that came home with a mask, apparently, allegedly tied to her face. So what is your opinion on that case?
Well, I'm going to have to do a pass on that one, because that's pending litigation, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get in trouble with our attorney if I make a comment on that one. So I'm going to have to pass.
I understand. Kim, do you want to opine? I can't hear you, Kim.
I'm sorry. I feel like I don't want to, but only because I feel like we should allow that to play out in the legal stage as it is going to. I'm not her parent. I didn't live through that event, so I would like to see how that goes in court.
Okay, great. So I will, Ms. Katie, this one is for you, since we didn't answer that one. I have a two-part question for you.
Okay.
How much do parents currently know about what their children are being taught in school? And how would you suggest increasing curriculum transparency?
Right. Well, I would suggest that parents have access to just about as much as they are willing to ask for. When I have already, as a parent of BPS students for the last 13 years, I have already been through several cycles of instructional materials adoption, textbook adoption, we used to call it. And whether it's social studies or math or English, when we start that process, by state statute, it's a very transparent process. People can come in, they can take a look at all the materials, they can register any objections that they may have, they can actually volunteer to serve on the committee that looks at all the materials. And so that would be like the instructional material side. The side that they may not see is, things that are not part of the specific curriculum. It may, class discussions, those kinds of things are going to happen. But, whether it's library books or materials, those kinds of things are made available. When it comes to things like sex ed or controversial topics, the district sends out letters, lets people know this is what we're going to be talking about. You can come take a look at it. You can opt your child out. And so as far as making it more transparent, I think the important thing is just to get that word out there, just to let parents know where to look, how they can be involved. I think that parents are paying attention more now than ever before. And actually, even though, sometimes that's seen as a bad thing, I think it's a great thing, because people are paying attention. And hopefully with that, paying attention, they'll also become more involved, become a volunteer. And I'll be honest with you, some of the best ways that I, as a parent, got to know what was going on in my child's school was, well, really two ways. One, by volunteering, because I helped in my child's classrooms, in the library, in the office, but then also when I became a substitute, because I got to know really as a substitute more than anything, the inner workings of the school. I know not everybody can take advantage of that opportunity, but those are a couple of really great ways for parents to get the inside scoop of what's going on in their child's classroom.
Kim, your turn.
I agree. I feel that you can have as much transparency or information as you choose to hunt down. I feel like sometimes hunting it down is the hard part. I have by chance found things on the BPS website, which I find a little bit awkward to navigate. It's not always easy to find exactly what you're looking for, even through a search. So I understand the frustration that people feel, like maybe they don't have all the information, but you can always, I've always had great communication with the administration and my kids' teachers, and I've been in their classrooms. So I feel, from my perspective, I feel that parents can have as much information as they want about what's happening in their child's classrooms and their lives. And I encourage everyone to become as active as they possibly can be in their kids' education, because it's proven that if a child has an involved parent, that they will be more successful in their education.
Okay. All right, ladies, let's keep it going. All right. Now, moving on from that, are you, ladies, in favor of term limits for school board members? Let's start with Kim.
I'm in favor of term limits for everything. I think everyone has a shelf life in a job such as this. I also think that there's value to having people with the experience and the knowledge. So I understand how that kind of has worked to the advantage of not having term limits, but I do believe that term limits are necessary in all forms of government.
All right, Katie, go ahead.
Right. Well, I personally am committed to, if I win this reelection, to just 2 terms. I think it's important to have new insight, a new perspective that comes from an outside point of view. I do value that experience because it's a pretty steep learning curve, especially for someone who comes from outside of education to, and even for someone who's coming like myself from inside education with that experience, to get all the information and be able to incorporate it into your decision making. But I will say, the only downside to doing kind of broad statewide term limits doesn't necessarily apply to us in Brevard, but we have some really tiny counties in Florida that, we've got school board members who have been on their school boards for a really long time and are trusted members of their community. And in those cases, I feel like it needs to be more of a community decision, like a county by county decision. And so, but in general, yeah, I think term limits, honestly, I think they should start from the top down. And we already have them for the president. It would be kind of nice to see them when you think about, we've got senators and congressmen who've been in office for decades, upon decades. Yeah, it's a good concept, and like I said, I'd like to see it go from the top down.
Okay, great. Let's move along and let's talk about the recent proposed changes by the Charter Commission to allow for an amendment in order to allow to remove school board members for misconduct. And what do you guys, what do you think about that option? You think it's viable? You think that it should go on the ballot for folks to vote on? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Let's start with Katie.
Yeah, so there's other offices that allow for recall measures, and so as long as it's done in a way that abides by the law, and honestly that is even-handed. And what I mean by that is just, it's consistent across what it is for other states. School board members are constitutional officers, like the sheriff and the supervisor of elections and things like that. And so it needs to be consistent. I would hate to see something like that be used as a political tool. But the Florida is pretty clear on what it takes to remove a school board member. And currently, the governor can remove a school board member, and then it has to be approved by the Senate, kind of similar to like an impeachment process. But it has to, there's things like drunkenness, different, I mean, it's pretty extreme things. And so that honestly, in a court of law, some of those things, I mean, drunkenness, I guess, would not be hard to prove, but they would have to be very specific instances. And of course, then, the most common that I've seen that people have been removed for over the last few years have been people who actually live out of their district. And so that's the school board members that I've known from across the state that have been removed. That's what they've been removed for. They either moved and didn't tell anyone, or they were elected and they weren't supposed to be. So as long, like I said, I don't have a problem with recalls as long as it's clear and it's consistent.
Okay, Kim, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I'm not opposed to recalls as long as the recall is for something that is significantly not doing the job that you have been elected to do. I mean, historically, there's not enough. I mean, there's not many people who actually get recalled under a recall election, and I feel that the part that was put into the charter was really based in a lot of other political flavor than really like trying to recall people for not doing their job, or more of a vendetta against one particular person. But I'm not opposed to it. I think if someone is fraudulently doing their job, or I agree, there has to be very specific and equal measures to recalls. And we also have to be ready to accept how that impacts finances, because they're very expensive to run with taxes. And I think I agree. It just really has to be consistent.
Okay. All right, ladies. Let's talk about books. All right. There's been a lot of articles out there, a lot of presses about books being banned in schools. So, 2 questions. Why are books being banned from schools, and particularly the libraries? And what approach do you believe is better than banning books? All right, Kim, you're up.
That's a lot to answer, and even a couple minutes. I agree with review processes for books that are conducted consistently for every book that is being questioned. I agree that we needed a policy that was district-wide, because we have a group of people who want them pulled. They will take up the time of every librarian pulling the book from every school that they're found in. Whether or not those books are legal or not, that is entirely up to a review process and using the state statute that determines whether those books are legal or not to be in our libraries. Currently, we are retraining media specialists on how to do their job based on our state government's viewpoint on literature, and other laws that were passed where we are removing books because of certain topics altogether. I have had many teachers and many media specialists reach out to me to discuss the book, the fact that they can't have classroom libraries yet. And I know the district said they weren't doing that, but the teachers are being told that they have to have all those books approved, which is an incredible process. I mean, some of these teachers have hundreds of books in their classrooms. And one teacher even told me that her library is closed, which I'm hoping that is just until this training occurs for our media specialists.
Do you want to say what school that is?
I don't. I don't want.
Okay.
So teachers are afraid to speak up. Teachers will not go on the record about the things that are happening because they're afraid of the repercussions that could be brought against them by parents. The governor has allowed schools or teachers, which would essentially be the district, to be sued for all sorts of, issues related to what they're teaching. And so they don't want to speak up. And so I have been collecting that information mostly so that I could run down if it's true or if it's a misunderstanding or if it's an administration that's simply telling some teachers to do that while the district is not saying specifically those things. But I know that just this week, a teacher decided to leave teaching because he's done with having to have all of his whole entire library picked apart, questioned on whether he's being appropriately providing literature to his students who happen to be high level classes in high school. And so we have a problem. We have kids that aren't reading to grade level, and we're taking away the tools that help them have a love for reading.
Okay. Katie.
All right. Well, your original questions were, why are we banning books and what approach is better? And let's just be clear. The banning book language is, to be completely honest, it's political rhetoric, and it's causes division. And you hit the nail on the head. You talk about it's been in the media. It's been in media. It's been in social media. Rumors are flying. And some of the things that Kim shared just a little while ago. In fact, right before we started, I got a text from someone said, someone said their library's closed. I don't know if it's the same schools she was referring to. I've heard we're not having scholastic book fairs. We're not going to have classroom libraries. Everybody's jumping the gun. And so, and honestly, listen, I'm going to run that rumor down and make sure I know, where did it come from? Why is it going out? Let's be clear, because we do with everything topsy-turvy. Clarity is sometimes hard to find, but I want to let me speak a couple of words of clarity when it comes to books. Because one of the things that comes out a lot, I hear this said all over, especially social media, people say, I don't think that one group of parents should be able to determine what another group of parents, what kind of books their children read. And, I agree. But here is what actually is happening. It's not one group of parents deciding for another group of parents, because in statute, the Florida legislature has given one entity specific responsibility over all the instructional materials, whether it's textbooks or library books or classroom libraries, and that is the school board. The school board has a responsibility to make those decisions, to make sure that it's appropriate, to make sure that the community and parents have a way to bring their concerns, to bring their challenges. We have to, by law, have a challenge process, and Kim was referring to that policy that we just revised and expanded this last spring. We have to have that. And so we have that responsibility. We are an elected body. We're elected by our community to make those decisions of how we're going to handle it. Like it or not, the people who made these laws, these new laws, they are also an elected body. And so it's not a group of parents making decisions for another group of parents like it's been kind of floated around. This is, elected bodies making decisions that honestly are going to kind of have to flesh themselves out, and we're going to see. And I understand the frustrations. Look, I've got some great friends who are media specialists. I've been talking back and forth with some of them, and have more conversations to come this week, because I understand the frustration. It is frustrating when the law goes into effect and we don't have all the answers before it goes into effect. And so we're going to work through this process. I would just encourage teachers and media specialists who are getting frustrated, just hold on. Let's drill down to what's actually in there. School districts across the state are handling this differently. And so we're going to follow the law, but I don't think we can. I think we can absolutely follow the law and have classroom libraries. We can absolutely follow the law and have books available to kids on day one. And so we're just, but all this spinning around and the frustration and anger, I just encourage people, don't jump to the conclusion, to the worst conclusion possible. Just hold on. We're going to get to it. We're going to have books and libraries available to students, and try not to get caught up in the whirlwind of rumor and rhetoric, honestly.
So, Katie, Kim has brought up some stuff, and I did have another follow-up question based on some of the things that she brought up. Now, it is stated that some teachers have expressed their unwillingness to comply with the state statute 847.012, the new legislation on banning certain topics on sexual orientation in the classroom. How do you feel about that?
Okay, I 847.012 is actually the definition of pornography for students. I think maybe it's the wrong statute. But so if you're talking about one of the new statutes that was passed
Yes,
this
the new
year.
statute, yeah.
Okay, maybe it's one of the sevens, 1447, 1557, one of those. And so I ask the question again, what is the concern that I'm not going to comply with what?
How do you feel about the unwillingness of teachers to abide by the statute?
Okay. Well, again, we have an elected body who created this law, and if you're talking about if it's a statute, I'm sorry if I'm trying to guess which one you're talking about.
I would have to go back and look at it.
There's one specifically that talked about that teachers shouldn't be teaching the subjects of sexual orientation and gender identity in the kindergarten through third grade. Is that the one you're referring to?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Here, let me just tell you, I would like to go to the horse's mouth and go straight to the source. I listened to the senator who sponsored that bill, and he was questioned in committee. And someone said, "Well, what if a student brings up a question? Why does Joey have two daddies or something like that? What is the teacher going to do? Are they going to get in trouble if they answer that question?" And he said, "Here's what you do. You say, that'd be a great conversation for you to have with your parents. We don't have to have a mini class lesson on." Homosexual relationships. It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for kindergarten through third grade students. And so it doesn't mean that people should get in trouble or students should be shut down. Don't say that. No, that's not what it means. It means that we need to make sure that those conversations are reserved for the place where they belong, which is in the home. And so honestly, I think those kind of conversations belong in the home a lot longer than third grade. But that is what we have. And so, in Brevard, we're going to be in compliance. Honestly, we were probably already, I doubt seriously any of those kind of conversations have been happening, but the world is changing, and it's changing really fast. And so I understand why parents have that concern, and I think a lot of that legislation was driven by that parent concern across the state. And that's why they wrote those laws into place. And certainly it's happened across the country that those conversations are having in the comprehensive sex education programs that are found even down in Miami. They were just dealing with this not very long ago. So the world is changing, and parents want to know what's going on, and those conversations absolutely belong in the home and not the classroom.
Okay. Kim, do you want to opine on this?
Yes. So first, the state of Florida does not have a sex education plan, but the schools are allowed to teach sex education, but that plan must be approved by the state. So first of all, we were never teaching children anything about sexual orientation or gender identity in the first place. And I realize that some people are like, good, we shouldn't be. I agree. What I have a problem with this bill is that because they had to use vague language because they could absolutely not say what it really is doing, which is only removing the ability for Timmy to say he can say he has two dads, and everyone's going to pretend like we can't talk about your two dads. but the child next to him can talk about his mom and dad all day long. So it does create a problem in the classroom in kindergarten through third grade. My second grader had come home with a lot of questions about things not that was taught to her by a teacher. In fact, the teacher had no idea what was being talked about on the playground, and I had a lot of questions to answer. And I reached out to her and just said, I don't know if you know what's happening, but I just want to let you know because another parent might get really upset about this. These kids, they live in everyday society, and we have to, as parents, give them the information we're comfortable with giving them. But at the same time, we have to be able to let them navigate the world they live in. And so, unfortunately, this bill has created prejudice against one group of people. And that is the problem with the bill. We weren't teaching children this. Teachers were not teaching children this. In fact, in 5th grade, my son had his first sex education class, and it's literally a biology lesson about what happens to his own body. It was not sex ed, and in 6th grade he missed it. So I just looked it up online to be sure that he had the facts.
All right, ladies, let's move on to another topic. Let's talk about critical race theory. Hot button issue, another hot button issue. So I'm going to ask Kim to lead us off on this conversation. How would you define critical race theory, and is it being taught in BPS? Your thoughts.
Okay. So, I mean, the definition of critical race theory is just, to give the short answer of what I understand, because I am not a lawyer, but I have read a lot and learned a lot about critical race theory to find out what was so problematic with it. Critical race theory discusses the fact that we've had a very long history of how the structure of this country was developed that left people out because of race, and oftentimes because of gender. And we've had a very short period of time where that has been against the law to discriminate against people because of the color of their skin. And that makes it illegal, but it hasn't changed the history and the system that has gotten us to where we are now. Critical race theory was not being taught to our students in Brevard Public Schools. The question about critical race theory came up, and might I add, it's like 4 decades old. So this has been around for a very long time. Critical race theory came up when Christopher Rufo brought it to the attention of our former president, which then it became this, again, it's political rhetoric. We're going to be afraid that we are going to discuss something that might be a reality. And people got uncomfortable. And so we're going to ban it. We also had trainings for our teachers that use the words critical race theory in order to help them understand how to teach children that come into our schools that are not like us, they don't look like us, they don't come from the same families as we do. We all have a very different experience, and how a teacher can teach that child in the best way possible for them. There were slides that were, I don't know if we want to call it leaked, shared, and it became a big problem for Brevard Public Schools, and they addressed it, and now we have a law that bans it. So I would question anyone who is very worried about critical race theory being taught to our students. I would challenge them to tell me what is scary about our factual, actual, truthful history.
Okay, Katie?
All right, well, let me just start by sharing what critical race theory is not. When you talk about race in a classroom, that's not critical race theory. When we teach the history of our country, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's not critical race theory. In fact, our students, we just developed the district developed a curriculum after we honored the Moores, Harry and Harriet Moore, from up in the North Brevard area. We have a curriculum that we're teaching them what happened to them, about their murder, about the work that they were doing, about how they were unjustly fired from Brevard Public Schools years and years ago. And so that's not critical race theory. But when you start to separate groups into oppressed, oppressor, when you start defining or limiting what someone is capable of based on the color of their skin, that's an issue. And so my understanding of critical race theory is that if there is an equity in outcome, then it must be because a system or a law, in case of critical race theory, particularly dealing with laws, must be biased, must be inherently racist. And so that kind of perspective of the world, that if you see a difference between groups of people, go look for the bias, go look for the law, that the law must be wrong, we need to do something about it. The truth is that years and years, decades and really centuries of bad laws and the results of slavery, the results of the after Reconstruction, the Jim Crow laws and all of those things that we were fought through the civil rights movement, those have left groups of people in our country in bad situations. They have not had the time to develop the generational wealth that comes from home ownership. And so there are differences, but to look for that kind of almost like a just a general, this is just a statement, this is the way that it is. I don't think that's a fair way to look at the world. As far as, is it being taught in our schools? Critical race theory as the college course, is it taught in our schools? No, it's not. Has it worked its way into the culture? Yes, it has. Has it worked its way into conversations? It has. And with things like the 1619 Project, which is reframed, which is ignored chunks of our country's history and reframed the whole beginning of our nation based on slavery. And the reason why we fought the American Revolution was not to break free from Britain, but because we were trying to protect slavery. It ignores whole chunks, not just of our history, but of our population from ages gone by. And so, things like that is I can understand why people would be upset, because if you're going to have things like the 1619 Project that are reframing everything and completely ignoring primary documents and things that actually happened and reframing it based on our modern mindset and going back and kind of rewriting things, I understand why people got upset. And so while it as a course is not taught, I understand why people are upset, because it has snuck its way. And all of us have seen the news stories of things that have been taught across the country, different schools and that. And so we just have to be really careful, because I don't want any of our students to look at themselves or the student across the room from them and say, you know what, because of the color of their skin, then they are going to have these opportunities, or they're not going to be able to do this, or because of the color of my skin, I am going to have these opportunities, or I'm not going to have these opportunities. We need to give opportunities to every student. We need to teach all of the history as history of what really happened. Don't add the ideology on top of it, but let our students realize that they give them the opportunities, give them the supports that they need. Recognize that not every student comes from the same background. They don't all have the same level of support from home, whether that's across racial divide, across economic divide, English language learners, people who have special needs and people who don't, who are gifted. We need to give them those supports so that they can realize they can all be successful. And I think that we have so many opportunities in Brevard for every student of every color and every economic background. We just, one of the things we have to work through is just making sure that we're connecting the students with the right resources to help them to be successful.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much. You answered both of you answered a lot of my follow-up questions on that topic. So we're just going to move along to teachers. We're going to cover a topic now having to do teachers, and across this nation, you've seen it in the news, there's a lot of shortage. Teachers cannot be found. Teachers are leaving there is, leaving to go to different professions. For me, I work in the health field, and I see it every day. Teachers are becoming something else, and they primarily come to my field, and that's where I see them ended up at most of the time, because I'm a professor at a college in New York online, and I have a lot of teachers in my classroom, and I go, "What the? What's really happening here?" They're making this transition. So, ladies, is there a teacher shortage in Brevard? If so, what can BPS do to attract and retain more teachers?
Right.
So let's go with Katie.
Absolutely, there is a teacher shortage in Brevard. We are not immune. There's a teacher shortage, like you mentioned, across the country, definitely in the state. So what do we do? And I'll back up a little bit and say, some of the reasons why I think that is, part of it has been pay. But then when you look at states, you mentioned New York, where teachers have historically, or at least for the last decade or so, been paid much higher than areas, like for example in Florida, they also have a teacher shortage. So it's not just pay, and we are hearing different things. It's the behavior of students, which of course has been exacerbated through the last couple of years with all the turmoil and students at home and things like that, being out of their routines through COVID. It also is the change in the community, but also part of it is this generation of teachers that's coming up, whether they're part of the millennials, part of Gen Z, it's just not, we're seeing in those generations, and I'm a Gen Xer here, so we see a little bit of in Gen X, but they're not staying with the same profession, and whether that's in teaching or medicine or business or whatever it is pretty normal to shift from job to job and not have that lifelong career that previous generations have really had the pattern to do. And so what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with a workforce that changes jobs every 5 to 6 years? And so a part of it is we have to continue to look for the funds to be competitive wage wise. We have to be competitive with, honestly, we're competing with Indian River County and Orange County and the county, all the other county, Osceola, that surround us. We don't want to be the lowest pay, because we want to keep even the teachers who live in Brevard instead of driving 45 minutes to get to work and going to work for another county. But also they can go into other industries, and so we have to talk about what are the benefits here. And of course, we've had sign-on bonuses and different opportunities like that that we've negotiated with the union. But I think the other thing we have to recognize is, we have to look in places that we have not maybe looked before. And so, there's a principal at one of my area schools who is great at this. Somebody will come in to be a substitute because they're just kind of in between jobs, or they're just trying something out, or maybe they just moved into the area and don't have an education degree. And I know that's kind of the holy grail. We've always been, you got to have an education degree, but just find out they had an interest. They had, for example, he had a teacher who had worked on Wall Street for years. He had a person who came into sub who worked on Wall Street for years, and he said, "Hey, are you interested in teaching? Because I think I have a place for you." And the guy came in and taught finance, taught economics, was a fantastic teacher. The district provides that training for teachers, and helps them walk through that process. I'm not going to say it's easy, but that's the world that we live in. People aren't majoring in education at college. The numbers for all of the colleges across the United States, the education programs are dwindling. And so we're going to really have to think outside the box and see how do we attract those teachers to our field. Even if we only have them for 5 to 6 years, maybe we'll find someone who's in it for life. But we find those people who are particularly passionate for students and have some subject area expertise, and then we can fill in the gaps. We're going to have mentors around them too to help them walk through those things that are very education specific. But we're at that place in our county and across the country. We're going to really have to think outside the box.
Okay, Kim.
Yes. So we absolutely have a teacher shortage. We have a substitute shortage. We have a staff shortage. We have a shortage of people. The why is not all money, because I've asked teachers, what would make you leave this profession now? And there are a lot of factors. A lot of it has to do with the last couple of years have been very difficult for teachers. We've asked them to do more with less. And we have a serious discipline problem where they are not supported all the time in what needs to be done discipline wise with students that are maybe even just disruptive, and the rest of the kids can't be learning because the teacher is constantly dealing with a disruptive student. So we really need to support our teachers, not only financially and pay them. We're $20,000 lower than the national average. That's a humongous gap. I mean, I wouldn't blame a teenager for not wanting to go into the profession of teaching. It's a gift. Having been in my children's classrooms, I have such respect and admiration for their teachers. They're so creative. They figure out a way to make everything work. Patience. They are just like a unique group of people. And I think that, I agree, we're going to have to tap into some sort of other profession or way that we can encourage people to engage with our kids and teach our next generations. I mean, it's essential. We have to figure this out. So, I know we have a lot of CTE programs here in our county. So it would be great if we could start to, through maybe even childcare programs. And I know we do have a childcare program available at one of our high schools, where we could start to maybe see that in some of our students, that nurturing ability, that ability to really connect with students or children. That I think is the more important factor. But I also respect people who have the educational background, because they really do a better job. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And so we definitely need to figure out a way to recruit and retain the teachers that we have. We had a teacher at our school who was my son's teacher leave to go to another school, and that was super disappointing, but I was still happy that she was teaching in the district. So we've lost teachers with a lot of experience. They may have even retired early over the 2020 to 2022 school years. And those are the places that I think it hurts the most.
I want to leave you guys both up because I want to ask a question. Let's use about 1 minute each to answer this. So, Katie, do you know the starting salary for a teacher right now?
Well, we just finished negotiations with the union, and so the one where we ended up last school year, it was 47,000. The state was trying to get all the school districts up to 47.5. I think with the negotiations, we just pending approval, vote of the union, and passing by the school board, the new minimum was going to be around 48,325 ish, somewhere in there.
Okay. So what if I say this? Currently, I'm in a field where individuals coming out of high school are jumping in at 60 grand. Mm-hmm. Just a high school diploma.
Right.
So how do you compete with that?
Yeah, no, that's a tough question. And of course, you have to think about, we have to put all the benefits out there. We're the benefits eligible. There is the time, the flexibility. Honestly, for a lot of people, through the years, through the decades, one of the attractive things about teaching is for parents that if you have kids in the school system, your schedule mirrors your student schedule, so you can be off with them on the breaks and off with them in the summer. That's unique. You can't just do that in any job. But it's going to come down to really someone's passion, because if they're not willing to do that, if they're not willing to, then no amount of money. I mean, for some people working in a school, there's not any amount of money that's going to make it worthwhile. But you're right. And we have teachers who can leave our profession. I talked about going to other school districts. They can leave and go into a related profession. For example, a science teacher going into an engineering job and make tens of thousands of dollars more per year. And so it really is going to come back to what what is the goal? What is the passion? Because we don't have state funding for teachers to make $69,000 a year. We don't.
Okay.
That's part of working for the government.
Kim, you want to opine?
I mean, I agree. It's not competitive. It's just not a competitive field to get into for anybody. I kind of I laughed a little bit. I had a master's degree and I left college, and I think the first year I worked, which was, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, was like $37,000. So, but all things equal, that would not be a salary that you would go to school 6 years to accomplish. So it has to be competitive. It just has to be. And we don't have the state funding, but we don't have less funding than another state from the federal government. So we need to figure out, how do we fully fund our schools so that we can pay our teachers a living, competitive wage, and attract people who want to live here. We're attracting people from all over the country, some cases of the world, to work in a place with aerospace industry. And our kids need to be educated, and we want them to be educated.
Let me jump in here real fast,
well.
because we're coming close to the end of time, and I have a couple more questions to ask.
Okay.
But let's ask this, Miss Katie. Affordable housing is an issue right now.
Mm-hmm.
A teacher making $47,000 a year right now in this market is pretty much going to be homeless.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
a
to
challenge.
really look at it, because if they have student loans and then the other factors behind that they have to worry about, I mean, that's a challenge. So is it a possibility for the school district to look at that as a way to retain teachers or to bring in teachers, finding housing solutions for them?
Right. You know, I hope the superintendent's not listening. I don't want to make him nervous, but I did just see an article about a school district across the state. I can't remember if it was Citrus or Collier, one of the counties that begins with a C. And they were looking at using some property that they have to build some housing. I don't remember how many apartments it would hold, but, a housing for employees, and so affordable housing. And, of course, that's a huge project. It would take, multiple years to go through, but I'm going to send that article to the superintendent, because right now, we, like I said, when you think outside the box, we have to put everything on the table, and maybe it's not something we can do in Brevard, but you know what? It's kind of nice when we have a pattern of somewhere else in the state looking at it, or across the country. Hey, can we do this here? Because you're right. I mean, it's not just teaching. One of my neighbors across the street said they listed their house. They just sold it. It's, less than 2,000 square feet, and they're sold it for $540,000. It's crazy. So definitely need to start thinking outside of the box on that issue as well.
Okay, Kim?
So that's a really great idea and example. Through my personal work, before I became a mom, I call it my previous life as working in the field of architecture. That is actually something that other places do. I don't know how successful it's been, because it kind of becomes like apartment building / live work situation, which not everyone is cut out for. But I think it's a very creative way to address those issues in a short-term solution to people not being paid adequately. There are schools that have built apartment buildings adjacent to their campuses to house teachers. And that might not work out for families. It might only be feasible for young people just starting out after college. But it happens. It happens. I mean, I would have to go back and look now, because it's been 12 years since I was working in that field. But other schools have used that as an option to attract teachers.
Okay, ladies, we're going to use about a minute to answer these. Try to go through these questions, and we're going to try to get as much done as possible. So just bear with me. Let's see if we can go another 15 minutes. we having good conversation, right? So I mean, it's really good. So there's a more struggle between people of faith and transgender individuals. As a school board member, what will you do to provide or to promote peace between the two without infringing on the rights of either? Let's start with Katie.
All right. So, I'm glad you asked this question because one of the things that, again, it's political rhetoric that goes around trying to divide and create fear and unfortunately hate is that people who are trying to protect the privacy of all of our students are that we don't think that transgender students have a right to exist, that we have enmity in our hearts for them. That is not true. But I will tell you, when we look at Title IX, for example, which is the law that President Biden's administration is trying to use to say that we need to allow transgender students to be able to use the restrooms and locker rooms and of their choice, and to to be on the sports teams and things like that. Title IX very specifically, and the regulations associated with it very specifically say that things like restrooms and locker rooms, showers, living quarters are things that can and should be separated based on sex. It's very clear. And so when we try, if we're going to try to rewrite that to say something that it doesn't say, I don't think that's fair to all students. I don't think it's a good situation that we put transgender students in those very specific situations. Talking about restrooms, talking about locker rooms, talking about athletics, competitive sports, those kinds of things. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't put our transgender students in a good situation. It doesn't put our non-transgender students in a good situation. I had this conversation with someone about locker rooms. It puts our coaches and PE teachers in particularly bad situations where in any other circumstance, if a female student was in the locker room undressing in front of a male teacher, gosh, what a horrible situation that would be. But because that student says, "Oh, I'm transgender," then all of a sudden it's changed and it's okay. And so I think when we talk about our community, we talk about equity, talk about the privacy, really thinking about what all students need. We have to maintain that privacy for those students and give them those separate places where they can go change and have options, so they're not just stuck going back into the room of the gender they don't identify with, but they have a private place. And that is how we handled it before. And honestly, that's the way I think we need to go back to handling it.
For those who are watching, I didn't say this earlier, please hit the like button, share this video many times over to your friends, family, neighbors. We have two valuable candidates here that are running for Brevard County School Board District 5, and we want to make sure their ideas, their thoughts are heard, so that way you guys can make an informed decision on who your candidate should be. I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for, but I'm expecting you to make a decision at the end of this this video. And if you're not, you can reach out to the candidates. And at the end of these tonight's, I'm going to give them an opportunity to explain how to reach them, etc. That way, that if you have follow-up questions, you can reach out to them, and they may be able to answer it. Sorry, I'm fumbling with my words, but Kim, your turn.
Okay. So I think this is another problem that has been blown out of proportion by a group of people. I understand the concern about locker rooms and bathrooms in general. I don't think that locker rooms and bathrooms have been a comfortable place for most high school students throughout the history of high schools. Having kids change in front of each other is awkward enough. But I would also say that we're so focused on these transgender students changing in a locker room. I would argue that having minors undress in front of a teacher is equally dangerous or inappropriate. So we're so focused on this one issue. And what we really should solve is that all of our students would have privacy if they're going to undress and get into PE clothes, rather than the locker room situation that we have and have had forever. Secondly, the bathroom issue, I think, is also a solvable problem. First of all, bathrooms have always been a problem. That's where kids go to do things they're not supposed to do because there's not a teacher watching them do it. But we could solve the bathroom issue by also making individual stalls private. I don't know why anyone would be concerned about washing your hands in the bathroom with someone of the opposite sex. But additionally, as we talk through these things and we have people come to the school board and we have people talking about transgender students, they're also misgendering them. So there are students who other students might not know what their gender is because their identity is different. So now we are going to force that child who maybe has been in the elementary schools allowed to use a private restroom that's shared by classrooms, and putting them into a middle school and saying, now you are going to use this locker room and restroom, and essentially outing them to their peers. I think that there's a way to solve the privacy issue that isn't harmful to some of our population. And to allow people to keep misgendering these students into a microphone every 2 weeks since March 9th of last year is irresponsible. And it's hurtful. We've had teachers speak. If my child went to that school, I would be concerned about what a teacher brings to a school board meeting and discusses on news programs. That's not appropriate. And imagine the student at that school, how that student must feel going into their school every day, knowing that they're being talked about with other adults in a way that is harmful. I just feel like we can do better for all of our kids by addressing the privacy issue in general, because if we're worried about a transgender student being in a restroom or a bathroom with our students, we should also be worried about just general shenanigans that happen in all bathrooms and locker rooms. I mean, I could name several instances just from, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago when I was in high school.
Okay. One word answer. I don't want to prolong the answer. Just one word answer. I'm going to ask you a question. Should transgender individuals participate in high school athletics? Yes or no?
Play sports? Is
Yes.
that what you asked? Okay. Well,
Or no?
I would say this. I would say yes, generally. We have allowed girls to play boys' sports. And as a mom of a girl and a boy, I've had a very difficult time telling my girl child.
Okay, yes or no? We got to keep it going.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay, Katie?
Not on a team of the opposite sex, no.
Okay, so your answer is no. All right, ladies, let's move it along because we need to wrap up soon here. All right. So we touch on a lot of different topics here. Let's talk about the budget. All right. So what is our approved millage rate right now? Do we know? Or what is the proposed new millage rate?
The one that we just passed was handed down to us by the state. Is 5 point something or other mils. So I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I know it's 5 point something. It's gone down every year for the last 12 years.
Okay, great.
And that number is set by the state, by the way.
So both of you, do you think the funding that we're going to get is going to be enough to cover the district for the next school year?
Well, I'll jump in there. It has to. We don't get to do like the federal government. We have to have a balanced budget. Whatever we bring in, down to the penny, and it is down to the penny, we have to account for that. And so will it be enough as far as are people going to get paid enough so they don't leave and go take those jobs that were getting paid thousands of dollars more per year? That's going to be up to the community. Honestly, I voted to put the millage on the ballot for the voters in November because I think our community needs to make that decision. The board can't single-handedly do anything with the millage. In fact, the millage that we just passed at last week's board meeting was the millage, like I said, handed down just by the state. This is how much you will levy on your tax base. So I think our community needs to decide, are we going to be like, because the counties around us have the extra millage, and that's why Indian River County and Orange County can pay their teachers so much more. And so are we willing to let so many people go across those county lines? We're going to have to decide as a county and make that decision.
Kim?
I agree. I'm not convinced it will be enough, but I think it's a short-term solution to a problem that needs long-term to be addressed long-term. So, and I agree. I think we should allow our community to decide, and like really what I would say it comes down to, like our children and their education, worth it. And we're losing teachers to other counties. It's just a fact. If you can make $10,000 by driving to Indian River County, $10,000 more, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't do it. So our community has to decide.
Okay, ladies, let's keep it going. So I read an article recently, I think back in July, that pretty much was opining and asking if should we look at consolidating the smaller schools with the larger schools in order to maximize the effects of the current budget. Is that something that you're in favor of? Yes or no? Let's start with Katie.
All right. It's hard to say the word in favor of because it's not something I want to do to our community. Whenever you have to close a school, even though we as a county, we have many more schools than similar. I think Seminole County has about the same number of students we have, but they have 20, 25, 30 fewer schools than we do because of the way their county is shaped and the way they've set up. We have some schools that are very small that only have a few hundred students. Do I want to do it? No. Are we going to possibly be in a situation where we don't have a choice? Possibly. And the other thing is that we have some really, really old buildings. When I first got on the board, we were just having 50th anniversaries and 60th anniversaries. In a few years, we're going to be celebrating 70th anniversaries. And so at some point, are we going to realize, is it more efficient to keep these aging buildings running and keep pouring more and more money to them? Or would it be a better solution to consolidate, to build a new school that's more efficient, that can handle a larger population? We're going to have to make those decisions in the future. And I think sooner rather than later.
Kim?
I agree. I don't think it's a popular decision to make. But again, there's a certain amount of funds that are available. The state tells the district how to spend much of those funds. And to be operational and to be efficient, sometimes you have to make hard decisions. It's sad for the schools that might, have to move into another school. I haven't seen that kind of effect because my children go to a school that is just massive already. But yes, I mean, if we have 100 students in a school and it's costing $1 million a year to run that school, and we have a school that has, let's just throw an arbitrary number, 500 students, like obviously that 100 student school is not efficient. So I don't think it's popular, but sometimes people have to understand that you have to work within the means that you have.
Okay, so do you feel the lawsuits that are currently out there are affecting the budget?
So just by way of information, most of the time when we have lawsuits, those funds usually come from what I'll just call the leftovers that fall to the bottom line. We don't necessarily have a budget for lawsuits, and so is it feel awesome to have to pay out taxpayer dollars in lawsuits? No, but at this time we're not. When we have made cuts over the last few years, we haven't made any cuts that had to do with lawsuit payouts.
Okay, Kim?
And listen, this the school district gets sued all the time for all different kinds of things, little things, big things, and we have different
Right.
issues. That's why we have a legal office.
Kim?
Well, I mean, yes, the lawsuits are taking money from things that we could do that with that money differently. So sure. But yes, I have also heard of lawsuits for all sorts of things every year that my children have been in school.
Okay. Ladies, we have come to the end of the debate. I would like for each of you to give me your closing arguments. So in a single, well, not a single sentence. I want to give you as much time as you need. So let's say 3 minutes each. And so you're going to wrap it up and tell me the top 3 reasons for wanting this position. And you're going to pretty much tell the viewing public how they can contact you, your website, your candidate information, whatever you want to tell them in that 3-minute time span. Okay. So let's start with Ms. Katie, and we'll give you the screen. So let me go ahead and.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for giving us the time tonight, Kevin, to address our community and get some, talk about some real issues. These are serious things. They're real issues that the board has either been dealing with in the recent past or is going to be dealing with in the near future. And so, to me, it's really important that as a representative on the school board that I am listening to the community, because I know that, like I said earlier, I'm not going to make the decision that makes everyone happy all the time, because people have such divided ways of thinking about things. But what I commit to continue to do is to listen, to do the research, to spend time talking to people who are in the trenches and all of the stakeholders, parents, community, students, teachers, administrators, all of our staff, to really try to figure out the best solutions and to work with people. I have worked with all kinds of people over the last 4 years, and really with the rest of the board collegially, to make decisions that are the best for our students. I do have that education background that has given me just great insight. I do have that experiential background of being a parent of a BPS student for the last 13 years, and still, having 2 students still in the BPS schools, and just, knowing our community, particularly the Palm Bay, West Melbourne community for the last 15 years of ministry, of getting to know what are our needs, what are the hardships, because we have, our community is dealing with some really tough things, and we touched on a few of them tonight. And so I want to continue that, to bring that connection. I feel like that's one of the things that this job enables me to do, is really connect resources to our schools. I like to be a cheerleader for our schools, and let the community know what great work they're doing, but I also be a representative of the community to the schools and say, this is what our community needs and wants, and to get that voice into the board. And so this is, like I said earlier, this is absolutely a calling for me. It's been a really tough couple of years to be on any school board in the country, but I feel like this is where I need to be, and I want to continue those efforts. So the best way to find out more about me is my website, and I'm glad you've got my name spelled there. My name's spelled a little weird, but it's katiecampbell.com, Katye, Campbell.com, and there's issues pages that talk about the work that I've done and my stance on different issues, including ones that we didn't talk about tonight, even though we got to most of them. Also, email address, katie4schoolboard@gmail.com. I have a school board Facebook page that has campaign things, as well as just my normal day-to-day job with school board activities on there, and you can find that at facebook.com/electkatie. I also have, on those places, you'll find my email address and my phone number, so you can contact me. You can reach out to me via Messenger. I'd love to answer questions. I answer questions all the time from people who just want to know maybe an issue that I hadn't thought about, or they have a concern that they'd like to bring from something that's going on in a school or community around them. So encourage people to reach out to me. And again, thank you so much for the time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me. Kim, it's your turn.
Okay. Thank you for having us here. And I would just like to end with, I'm aiming for our kids, all of our kids. Our students represent a very diverse community. We live in a super diverse area of Brevard County. And I'm running for all those students. And because I'm running for the students, I advocate for our teachers. I advocate for their better pay, for respect, for their support. Without our teachers, our children are not learning. And this has been an issue that we've faced over the last couple of years through the pandemic, when we were missing teachers from sickness and quarantines, and our children were in libraries being essentially babysat while they were missing out on learning opportunities. I'm running for our students and parents, because our parents need to be involved with our students as much as possible. There are a lot of people who have not had the privilege of being able to be as involved as others. And so I am strongly advocating for mentors to come into our students and help our students who might not have that parental guidance in their day-to-day lives. And my goal really is to embrace the diversity that we have in Brevard Public Schools and find equitable ways for all of our students to have the same achievement levels. And I can be reached through my website, Huff for Schools, HOUGH, the number 4 schools.com. And that links to all social media and an email that you can ask me any questions that I didn't answer tonight. We covered a lot of ground. And, you know, if I'm voted in, I really look forward to helping our kids achieve their goals in education so that they can go forth and leave Brevard Public Schools successful.
Okay, ladies, it's been a great night. Thank you for joining me tonight and taking time out of your busy schedule to do this presentation. I hope the public enjoy this. I hope that everyone share this video with your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues at work, and let them know about Palm Bay Live and let them know about what we're trying to do. So thank you for joining me tonight, Palm Bay and beyond. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night, where we'll have District 1 debates with Misty and Megan. And so tomorrow night, we'll start off, kick off at 8 p.m. Eastern. So join me tomorrow night. And then next week, we'll have the judicial candidates will join me next week for a series of debates as well. So see you then. See you tomorrow night. And please hit the like button, share, and subscribe to our different channels and platforms. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.